going to be joined by Shreyas from the Aave Grants DAO, Ken from notably the Uniswap Grants program, not DAO, and then also we have Carl coming from Dydx Grants and also from Reverie, which is an awesome company in this space. So I am Jacob. I'm on the ETH Global team, and yeah, excited to have you all here. So yeah, I thought maybe we'd start with intros. Maybe we'll just do right to left or my right to left. So I don't know, Shreyas, do you want to get started here?
Yeah. Hey everyone, I'm Shreyas. I'm the co-founder of Llama, which is building economic infrastructure for DAOs and does a bunch of DAO treasury and governance work. I'm also the program lead for Aave Grants and have been doing that for the last year and a half.
Hi everybody, my name is Ken. I do grant stuff across Ethereum and Uniswap. I help with the Ecosystem Support Program, which is the EF Grants program, and I helped run the Uniswap Grants program.
Hey guys, Carl. I do governance stuff at Reverie. We are a small startup that just launched last year. We basically help DAOs scale and work with lots of different projects on governance stuff, and part of that is helping Dydx with their grants program, which we lead.
Awesome. Do we also want to chat a little bit about the exact grants program and maybe sort of a little bit intro to how you're thinking about grants, kind of the underlying kind of ideas behind the program and that kind of thing too? So maybe we'll start with the Aave program and go from there.
Yeah, so Aave launched its grants program in May 2021. So prior to that, Aave was giving out grants from Aave Company, and this is the first major spending from the DAO itself, and so it was a significant moment. I think the first DeFi protocol to do it was Uniswap, and Aave followed soon after. We started off with a $1 million a quarter grants budget, and now it's about $3 million a quarter. We started off just focusing on developer grants, and specifically on projects that benefit the Aave ecosystem. And so one difference, say, between Aave and, say, broader Ethereum Foundation grants are that we do have a requirement that it is helpful to Aave and beneficial to Aave, and Aave is not just a tangential part of the project. And yeah, we kind of generally require that the projects are open source and can be maintained and built on going forward. We put down sort of a list of RFPs and things that we thought would be interesting for people to build on Aave, but some of the most interesting projects were ones that just use people's creativity. One thing that's changed, I'd say, over the last year is we're funding many more events and community-based projects. Initially, we pretty much focused on developer projects, but now we have taken on much more of the sponsorship of hackathons and events, as well as other media sponsorships like Bankless.
So I'm here with the Uniswap Grants program. That, like Aave, started out of Uniswap governance. Uniswap itself started from an Ethereum Foundation grant, and I helped. I guess I was part of the team that made sure that Hayden got this grant to start Uniswap. But it's been really cool to kind of switch gears and think about how do we think through grants when it's not just Ethereum, right? It's not just the meta goals of protocol or the Ethereum base layer protocol, right? We're thinking about, from a dApp-specific perspective, how do you grow a DeFi protocol? How do you think through, not just, as Shreyas was saying, not just the developers, developer tooling, developer experience, but also thinking about the community. What is the community? And also kind of, when you think about Uniswap, there's still the idea that, the protocol and the Uniswap Labs, the company, are the same, but they're really not. When we're thinking about integrating with Uniswap, it is a very, very different perspective of how do we actually use the tools that are all open source? How do we actually have ownership of the Uniswap protocol? So that's been a lot of fun to kind of think through.
Yeah, so Dydx Grants launched earlier this year in January after a community vote to allocate roughly $6 million of Dydx funding to the grants program. We launched with a pretty general mission of just growing the Dydx protocol and sourcing talented contributors that could become kind of long-term members of the Dydx community. An important note is just kind of Dydx, the product, right, is kind of closed in its development. And so the grants program has been working more externally and figuring out ways that we can grow the protocol from an external tooling standpoint. And so, yeah, it's kind of differs a little bit in that sense, I think, from the ones that you guys are doing, but we were still able to kind of accomplish a lot of awesome tools and find really, really great contributors to build and kind of become full members of the community.
Awesome. And yeah, while this panel is sort of self-serving for me, it's also kind of the perfect panel to have at a hackathon because you're going to be building all these awesome projects over the weekend, and it's very likely that whatever you build, there's likely a grant that is out there that can help you continue building it after this weekend. So I want to also kind of put the questions for this panel around also thinking about how you as attendees or people building for the first time a new project can kind of have the best shot at building a great grant proposal, helping measure that proposal, and just give you a different tool set to kind of think about how to work with all these grant programs that are out here, notably these three, but then also all the existing kind of very wide tapestry of grant programs out there. So maybe just to start on a quick question, or actually it's probably going to be a long question, just measuring success in grants. Obviously, it's one thing to kind of give out the money. It's another thing to make sure that the funding went to the right place and that the right outcomes were met. So I don't know, we would maybe start with Shreyas again. Like, how do you think about kind of measuring the success of the grants that you're offering? And do you have any kind of mechanisms that you built or best practices you've developed? And maybe we can just go down the line kind of thinking about how to basically structure ROI with grant giving.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'd say the general goal for Aave grants is to support projects that build and grow the Aave ecosystem and bring an influx of contributors that hopefully turn into long-term contributors for Aave. Some of the broad metrics we look at for projects is they could influence revenue for Aave protocol, a growth of volume, retention of TVL, growth of users and retention of those users, growth of the number of community members generally, the people who just participate on discourse and vote on governance forums, and the generally the number of integrations that for example Aave launched V3 and the number of projects and protocols that integrate with Aave. For Aave, since it's a lending protocol, we aim to increase the number of stablecoin deposits, and so can we fund projects that improve that, and yeah, so it's like a whole host of metrics. I would say that you can't be like super quantitative early on. These are very early stage projects, and so some of them it might just be the first thing they're building, and so Ken mentioned the example of Uniswap funded by the EF. There probably wouldn't have been like a strong quantitative framework, I think, to fund Uniswap. It probably was really talented developer, an interesting project, and was probably worth funding. But yeah, retroactively, we definitely look to analyze whether the projects have been effective or not. And one thing that's rather simple is honestly, if the project's completed well, decently well, and in a reasonable timeline, it's usually been successful. And so rarely has there been a case where the project's kind of completed reasonably well and and in a reasonable timeline, and it's kind of been a failure to Aave grants. And so I would say the bar for vetting the projects is high. So we look at ability for the team to execute, the general integrity of the team, as well as the benefit to Aave. And the benefit to Aave maybe is covered by some of the metrics I outlined. But typically, if the teams complete the project and complete these milestones how they've outlined, it's usually a success.
Yeah, I guess building off of that, I mean, I think when you think about the word success, we kind of think of it as like a binary, like whether it's success or it's a failure, right? You either win or you lose. But I don't know, I mean, I think there's like a broad spectrum of like what success actually means to the ecosystem. And exactly as Shreyas pointed out, right, like Uniswap as a public good, I think when we decided to give the grant, it wasn't that we thought like, man, we're gonna create DeFi, it's gonna be fantastic. The EF did not. We were not thinking like, it's gonna set off this whole thing. The idea was create like an Ether Delta or alternative, right? Like have a decentralized exchange. That was the goal, right? This is a public good. So when we think about success, I mean, I think we can always quantify different metrics in which like we can determine this is impactful in the future. And when we unpack kind of what we believe impact is going to be, it's very hard to kind of say like, oh, we have a 10% hit rate, or we have like, 130% ROI on the TVL. I mean, yes and no, right? But you're also at the mercy of the market. Like, you think about market share. And so, I don't know, I'm of the opinion that when things are funded, you have to think through what is the output here. If this output is going to ultimately grow the pie for others, that itself is successful, right? Even the failure to accomplish something is a success. And I use this example a lot, but yesterday's talk, we had Carl and Hayden at the opening ceremony, and that's one of the things that came up, right? I teased Carl about this, but Plasma, not that long ago, existed as a scaling solution for Ethereum state channels. Also, right, things that were going to save Ethereum and make it work immediately. That was in 2017, and here we are today, and you don't really hear about Plasma state channels too much. But without that, without kind of everything that was built, everything that was funded through grants for Plasma, we would not have and we would not see optimistic rollups as we see it today. So, ultimately, success is this wide spectrum of like how productive is it going to be, how much impact are you going to have on the future, and even again, the failure to accomplish something itself can be successful.
Yeah, I totally agree. Grants is basically, you could view it as a small subdivision of a growth department for the protocol. And in that way, it kind of has less tangible metrics that we can turn to. We can obviously turn towards completion rates and like look at the analytics, how many viewers or like whatever there was on the newsletter. But at the end of the day, it is going to be a bit more of a bigger picture than those small metrics. Obviously, they are helpful to determine whether a grantee completed their work, if they're, they did all that. But at the end of the day, we like to think of, very large scale growth for the protocol, which is going to be determined on a multi-year scale.
Yeah, and I recognize going last in a list of 3 people is pretty tough. So I wonder, Carl, from another angle, what can grantees do to kind of best report those results to you? Like, what have you seen there?
Yeah, accountability is a big part of it, definitely. With grants, there is a pretty high level of like self-accountability where you need to kind of put yourself out there. You can't be dependent on the grants team to like follow up on you the same way that a boss would or something like that. You really have to be willing to put yourself out there. And so that does mean selling yourself and selling the product that you're building. And when you complete a grant, obviously, I think speak for all of us, the grants team is there to help in marketing and kind of putting it out there, but you definitely want to have some channels open and then kind of make sure that you're engaging with the community that you're working with and pushing the tool or whatever it might be that you're building in order to increase the success rate.
Amazing. Yeah, cool. I mean, we already kind of talked about it, so maybe I'll jump ahead to the public good side. I mean, that's a topic that's been coming up a lot recently, especially there was a kind of a cool, like, retroactive public goods, like you mentioned, thing that Optimism did. Like, how much do you think public goods falls into grant funding, or maybe it's your DAOs are specifically focused on actually getting, maybe some more ROI for the underlying protocol, but like, how much of this do you think is just kind of public goods and kind of supporting the community? And is that a separate thing, or is that through the grants DAOs? I don't know, maybe Ken, do you want to start on that one?
You want me to start?
I don't know.
I think the idea of public goods is amorphous for most people and just like not very tangible. I think we like the meme of public goods, right? We should all fund public goods. It's so great, but like, I don't know. I think all of us would have different definitions of what public good is for us. So I think it's very individualistic in terms of, or I guess like it's bespoke in terms of like your protocol and your respective kind of like circles of what that public good is going to be. I mean, I think we can think of like base layer Ethereum as the general public good for all of us, right? So if we're all, maybe except Dydx, but I think, I think supporting core infrastructure, making sure that all of these things can exist, making sure we're increasing the surface area and the different ways in which developers can participate and not just, do things, but like meaningfully participate, like at ETH Global Hackathons, right? Everyone who's hacking, looking at developer documentation, making sure that is robust, making sure it's accessible to, whatever language you want to build on, right? That itself is a public good. I think if we're thinking, larger time scale of like how we can, maintain everything, we're also thinking of Gitcoin, we're thinking of all these other, things like, the one example that I think Scott Moore from Gitcoin likes to bring up is Ether's.js. This has been used for so long. The core, tool for most dApps. And so that is a public good, right? When we think through how can we make sure that this is sustainable long term, that is a question that grants has to sort of like tackle head on. And I think that's where public goods funding is extremely powerful. Because in hindsight, yes, this has been amazing. But Rick Moo came up with this because he wanted an easier way to build at hackathons. He didn't set out to make like a token, a company. It was literally, I want to build fun stuff. I'm gonna have this library so I can more easily do it. That is a public good. And so when we think through like, how do you fund things, that are productive, it's thinking through how it helps other people. How does it actually grow the pie for others? And I don't know, maybe I'm insane, but when I think about it, it is in the kind of, it is a food shape pie of making it larger. Instead of all of us capturing different pies, let's have one pie and let's share it. Yes.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I think optimism and added kind of impact equals profit as kind of a mantra. It's very similar to that. Like, the more impact you have, the kind of more profitable everything should grow. Awesome. Yeah, I'll be remiss to mention that all three of these DAOs are really critical in making ETH Global function. All three of them are supporters of ours. And we really can't do it without these supporters. So thank you all. Yeah, it's not a jazz clap. It's a real clap. Awesome. Okay, cool. Yeah, maybe we'll move on to another quick topic here, and maybe this is kind of more the thing that maybe people in this audience will be thinking about in the next couple weeks after they finish this crazy weekend. Just how to start with grants in general, and building an application, and what do great applications look like. I'm kind of coming into the spaces thinking about if I'm going to open an application, it kind of feels like I'll put together a VC slide deck. I don't know if that's how I should be thinking about it. I don't know, maybe Shreyas, do you want to start off on this one? Just kind of what do great applications look like, and how to build one?
Yeah, I would say keep it pretty simple. Like Aave Grants, for example, you can just go to aavegrants.org, and we have just a very short form that you fill out. And I think the main things that stand out about good applications is just that they're generally specific, and they outline what you're planning to do, and general timeline, and why your team is good to execute this. Beyond that, we don't look for extra fluff, or it need not be the best designed with flowery words or anything like that. Our process is quite simple. You send out this application for grants below 20K. They can be typically approved just with reading the application. From 20 to 70K, we have one reviewer reading the application. We could have interviews, and 70 to 100K, we have potentially multiple interviews, and then beyond 100K, we also like to get the Aave community involved. So we'll ask you to post it on the governance forum, or and on Snapshot to just get a temperature check. But if it gets to that stage, we definitely will guide you through that process of governance, and kind of let the community know what we've thought of the grant, and where we are in the process. So with that, you wouldn't have to be wired early, but the early stages of the process should be quite simple. And maybe the bad applications are either spam applications that have nothing, or I think they just have no specificity in terms of, say, how is this project going to benefit Aave, or how is it what exactly are you doing that seems possible within, say, 3 months or 6 months. We're very down for it, very ambitious projects as well. We've funded them, but just some sense of, hey, if it's a larger grant and it's a more ambitious project, how can you actually just break it down into a few milestones that seem tangible and achievable?
I suck because I pretty much don't answer any of your questions. So when we think about grants, and I'm gonna just keep going meta, but when we think about grants, I think the most important thing is less so about us. We as people who review your applications, great. I think we're not any smarter than anyone else who's building. I think the real thing that I think for us we want to see is, what is it that you want to build? What are your core values? What is actually bringing you and kind of putting you in the position to want to apply for a grant? And I think the other thing that we have to think through is not so much that like we are here to decide, are you worthy, yes or no? That's just unfair. What grants in Web3 have allowed us to do is shift the paradigm, right? We can think through, I say this a lot, but like finding grants and applying for funding is kind of like dating, right? There are 3 of us on the stage who can give you grants, but not all 3 of us, individually we all have different goals. We all want to see different things. You can apply to all 3 of these programs and figure out, is this right for me? Do I want to take your money? The answer could be no, right? We could give you money. All 3 of us can offer money to the same grantee, but the grantee can say, if you take away from my core values, I don't want your funding. I want to build this one thing. This is the scope in which I want to build it. And if you're taking me out of my comfort zone, or you're taking me out of my core values of what it is that I want to build. For example, there's a DApp, right? A tool that is for governance, but it's only using one specific form of governance, and I don't want to conform to another standard for governance. That's all I'm gonna build. That's okay. You can go to the grant organization that's going to give you funding for exactly that. But at the end of the day, I think the most important thing is making sure that you are building something that you want to build, something that you are passionate in, right? So I would say that the paradigm shift here, instead of thinking through what it is that we want or what it is that we are so specifically looking for, you tell us what you want to build, and we'll give you feedback as to whether or not this fits within the scope of, say, what like Uniswap wants, or what can be impactful for Uniswap. And the answer is no, it's not actually impactful at all. That's okay. There's so many other funders out there.
Yeah, totally agree. It's all about the passion, really. That's what we see in terms of success rates when it comes to grantees. It's only the really passionate ones who had the drive and the willingness to pursue the project that they were interested in doing end up completing it. The rest of them kind of disappear, or it fizzles out, or whatever. And so starting off, what are you passionate in? What is it that you want to do? Are you interested in this protocol? Do you want to build on top of it? If yes, then apply for a grant. There's a good chance that there's going to be room for you there. As Ken said, it's really like, this is an incredible opportunity for builders in the space to be able to dictate what it is that they're going to work on. It's actually quite fascinating. It kind of, in the TradFi world, you have to apply for a job and be told what it is that you're going to do. Here, you can come up with your own job and be rewarded for it. And then if you do a great job, chances are the grants team is going to come and say, all right, what do you want to do now? What do you want to do next? Like, you delivered on this, let's do it again. Let's give you another grant, build again. And that just keeps going. And then suddenly you find yourself an active contributor to that protocol, and there you go. You've got it.
I mean, that's a good point. Even if you build something this weekend that maybe doesn't fit, or you don't want to continue on, like, as you mentioned, there are all these RFPs. I think everybody here has a list of projects that, I guess, requests for proposals for people who don't know what RFP means. Like, I think like a wish list, like what they're looking for, and they'll fund it. They'll help you, support you. They'll give you a community. There's all these people waiting to kind of take you under the fold and help you out. So even if whatever you build this weekend doesn't make sense to continue, there's a lot of other opportunities, but continue it anyway. Okay, wanted to move into kind of like change. Change is a scary word. Obviously, lots of things have changed over the last little bit. I guess maybe to start, like, one of the big changes we've seen is just sort of how DAOs work externally with people, and even just kind of understanding more around like setting up entities and infrastructure, and just sort of like connecting these DAOs, these pools of money, into the real world where there are these kind of all these different restrictions. Wanted to maybe start with Carl, because I think you've done a lot of great work on this side. Maybe just chatting about how, in general, kind of the structure has changed over the last years on just kind of entity side, infrastructure side, thinking about kind of like integrating it in.
Yeah, for sure. Dydx, thanks to some legal gigabrains on the Dydx team, we're able to actually transition the grants program into a Guernsey purpose trust, which now gives us a legal wrapper around the entire like multi-sig effectively. And so it converted what is just the committee, which really is just the multi-sig signers, into a whole trust whereby the multi-sig signers now act as trustees for the trust, Reverie acts as the enforcer for the trust, and Dydx token holders become the beneficiaries for the trust. Now what that really means is Dydx and its community, the Dydx community, now have full control over the entire grants program, and they can effectively decide whatever they want in terms of like removing a trustee. They can remove Reverie as the enforcer if they want. They can wind down the entire grants program if they want. But really what it means is us as the grants lead are now legally bounded to act in the best interest of the DYDX community, which is really interesting. And then there's obviously lots of other benefits to it. It's enabled us to have like this legal entity that we can use to interact with traditional service providers. We can work with OTC market makers and stuff like that and have like an actual legal entity that we can point towards that is really just the grants program.
Awesome. Anybody else want to add anything about how your programs have changed over the last couple of years? Even doesn't have to just be entity side, but just any ways that you've changed the way that you interact with the world outside of DAOs. All right, nice.
I mean, the only thing that I think I mentioned that we've mainly changed is that we fund many more events and community-oriented projects, and not just developer projects. And so I think initially we wanted to have more focus, but yeah, as we got more confident in just our allocations to developer grants, we thought we could expand the scope, and now we do things like take on more media sponsorship, or a lot of times supporting hackathons and other events, and providing the resources and coordinating with the Aave sort of company to just coordinate who's doing what in a particular event, which was typically done just by the company.
Awesome. I guess another change that's happened since a lot of these programs started is, of course, we're kind of moving into like a growing market and kind of a great macro, and now we're kind of into maybe a more receding macro. It's a nice way of saying bear market. Like, how are you guys thinking about changes kind of in addressing this new kind of market versus kind of how it was over the last couple of years? And does that even change anything? Like, I'm just kind of curious, like, how you're thinking about this, and maybe we'll start with Shreyas.
Yeah, in terms of our approach to funding grants, nothing has really changed. I think we're still looking actively to fund projects, and we're, not gotten more conservative in funding projects. I think we still are in the phase of growing Aave, and so projects that generally benefit the Aave ecosystem are projects we want to fund, and we want to always find like talented builders and support them early to build useful things for the community. The one thing we did well, I think, in the last proposal is we got half the funding in Aave and tokens and half the funding in USDC. And so Aave is an interesting protocol because it's a lending protocol that actually accrues AUSDC in one of the revenue collector contracts. And so we actually got approved to have half the allocation in USDC, which is really helpful, especially if you're managing like a 6-month budget in a highly volatile token. That's just hard. And so having at least half of that in denominated in US dollars, since the grants are denominated in US dollars, it's very helpful. And that's, in retrospect, was very helpful, I think, given the market situation now. But nothing has changed in terms of our general approach to fund projects.
Yeah, I guess I've been doing grants since 2018. But it's been crazy to see the change from like 2018 today in terms of the types of applicants that come through, the types of projects that have come through the pipeline. I mean, just the idea of what it is that we can build, and sort of the different expertise that comes through the pipeline now is just vastly different, right? I think like very recently we received a grant application for a former Disney executive. What are you building on Uniswap? So interesting. And so maybe we'll see soon. But I think these things are in terms of getting mindshare for what it means to actually get a grant, or what grants can do, what that can unlock for people. It's really blown me out of the water. Just thinking about, I believe that like for myself, having done this for, I don't know, like boomer years, I'm stagnant. I feel like I'm not creative anymore compared to like everything else that comes through the pipeline. And it's just like a beautiful sight to see when we do have fresh ideas. And I think that's like sort of the I don't know, the fallacy in sort of like the the market or in like crypto Twitter now, where it's like, oh, it's the same shit being built over and over again, but it's not. You're seeing a lot of new and like fresh ideas, really trying to innovate different parts of the protocol, and I love seeing that. Yeah, but more tangible things, as Shreyas said, our entire multi-sig is in Uni. We are completely at the mercy of the market. I wish we could have USDC, but the Uni treasury does not have anything else. And that's been tough, being able to manage treasury. I mean, Shreyas is also like a master of like treasury diversification and just management. I am not. And so, we're now at a point where for us, we are budget constrained. We've committed at this point all of our funds from the multi-sig. So now the pressure's on us to have to go to the multi-sig as a grants program now go to governance and ask for more money to expand the scope of what Uniswap grants is going to look like, or the next iteration of grants is going to look like. And that's an interesting kind of thing to think about, right? What have we done in the past? What are high conviction bets that we made? Has this been successful? And if yes, we should keep doing that, or if not, let's do other things. But the goal is definitely talk to the community and try to figure out what else can we do. And that's I think those are the biggest changes. Noticing that the protocol is not just us. There are new players in the protocol. There are more people doing more things. Now, how do we all kind of coalesce and build stuff together as a community, collaborating together?
Yeah, totally agree. Dydx, by the way, is also in a similar position where we got our funding in Dydx token. The market obviously has kind of shaved off some of that funding, and we're now in a position where Reverie actually just submitted a discussion to raise an additional round of funding from the community for our grants V1.5, which we're going to launch with a similar mission, but kind of hoping to take the lessons that we learned in V1 and apply them to V1.5 and scale things up a bit more efficiently. And now that we're ready, we have the infrastructure, we'll be ready from day one, basically, in order to really launch and be able to support the grantees and the community through this program.
Awesome. Cool. So I know we're almost at time, so I want to be sure to make sure that everybody gets time to plug what they're working on and exactly how to move the next step for grants. I'd plug my stuff, but you're already here, so thanks. So yeah, maybe Shreyas, do you want to chat about how to get started if you have an idea for building on Aave or anything involved?
Yeah, very open to any projects that generally benefit Aave, and so if you want to apply for a grant, especially after you build something initially, you can go to aavegrants.org, and it's quite a simple application to apply for anything. One project idea maybe I'll plug is we're looking to fund a governance interface for Aave, and so something that just lets any sort of non-technical governance participant just put up a governance proposal very easily and just have the key sort of actions that a typical governance proposal has, like say just execute a transfer function, a few other major functions for a governance proposal, just in a very simple interface that will be hosted on aave.com, and also just have a much simpler sort of view of the existing proposals, maybe even incorporate sort of discussions that happen after the on-chain proposal goes live, and easy ways that you can sort of see the delegates, the top delegates, and maybe delegate to specific governance participants. So there are tools out there like Tally and other projects that are building interesting governance solutions. But some of them actually haven't integrated Aave, because Aave has a different governance framework versus Compound, Governor, Bravo, and Alpha. So if anyone's interested in that, please apply or chat with me.
Yeah, plus one to that. Governance interface, definitely needed. I think we all need it. Just in terms of just getting governance out there and making it more usable and making it, easy to use, I think is the big thing, right? It's not very easy right now. And I think for Uniswap, I think we have $10,000 in bounties, right? Is that right? So, yes?
Something like that.
Yes.
I think 10, yeah. 10.
$10,000 in bounties. So we have some for the best and most interesting integrations with Uniswap, and that is very vague. Do whatever that integration means to you, whether it's interfaces, simple pro interfaces, thinking about data visualizations, analytics? How do we think about that? How do you integrate, or like what is your integration with Uniswap? Are you taking the front end? Are you taking the back end, just the contracts, the factory contracts? I would love to see more TWAP uses. Yeah, innovative Oracle. Really, I just want people to think about how the different parts of Uniswap kind of play into other applications. And then we also have another bounty for the most innovative usage of Uniswap. So 2 different bounties, but that is your imagination. Let it run wild. Do whatever you want with Uniswap. I would love to see it. I think at the last ETH New York in 2019, 1inch was started here. So let's see some more.
Yeah, I guess +2 now on all of that, basically. Dydxgrants.com is where you can apply for grants for Dydx. We're open for all kinds of ideas, really anything that's going to benefit and grow the Dydx community and protocol. We're super interested in talking about TWAPs. We have like TWAP bots and stuff like that were built recently by grantees. So anything that can sit externally of Dydx and help traders, anybody really like become a more efficient trader on Dydx and research on perps, whatever it might be, we're there, and we'll be super excited to talk to all of you.
Amazing. Well, if anybody wants to build a governance dashboard, I think that's an immediate, easy win. So I guess there's your free outcome here. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us. And welcome to have you. And again, thank you so much for supporting these events. Without your DAOs, it honestly would not be possible to do these events. So we really appreciate it.
Thank you.